Now at 6 o'clock, the BBC News with Sophie Raworth.
At 6, junior doctors announce 5 days of strikes in England just a week before the general election.
Do we want pay restoration? When do we want it? Now!
The Prime Minister calls the strikes politically motivated. The doctors' union says talks with the government have produced no pay offer.
Good evening from Devon. On the day that Labour are talking about the NHS, news of these strikes has left Rishi Sunak livid.
Also tonight, confusion over whether or not the Labour MP Diane Abbott can stand at the election. She says she's been barred. Sir Keir Starmer says she's not. An investigation finds the Singapore Airlines flight that hit severe turbulence dropped 180 feet in less than 5 seconds, leaving one passenger dead. And spectacular images from Iceland as the volcano springs into life again.
On BBC London, more on the Diane Abbott row, plus a sharp rise in the number of reported sexual harassment offences among girls and teens on London transport.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. Junior doctors in England will walk out again on strike just a week before millions of people go to the polls. The 5-day strike will begin at 7 a.m. on June the 27th and end on Tuesday the 2nd of July, just 2 days before Election Day. It means there'll be thousands more hospital appointments and treatments cancelled. It's their 11th strike since March last year. The government says it's a highly cynical tactic during an election campaign. The Prime Minister says it's politically motivated. The doctors say there have been no new pay offers despite talks. Our health editor, Hugh Pym, is outside a hospital in London for us now. Hugh.
Yes, Sophie, the NHS was always going to be a big issue in this campaign, even more so now with this planned strike in England disrupting hospitals days before polling day. Rishi Sunak has said it's politically motivated. The doctors' union, the BMA, say it's his fault for scuppering the talks and calling an election, meaning that a realistic offer simply wasn't going to be made.
It started in March last year. Junior doctors in England out on strike in their dispute over pay. By the summer, walkouts were continuing, but for a time, with talks underway, there were hopes of a settlement. By February this year, with the 10th strike, the dispute wasn't settled. Then came mediation talks, they failed, and another strike has been called.
The government walked away and collapsed talks. There was nothing more that we could do to be able to have those talks with them because they refused. And so now we're asking, if they're not going to talk to us, to make a public commitment that gives the confidence in our committee that there is a plan for pay restoration so that we can call off these strikes.
What do we want? Pay restoration! When do we want it? Now!
By pay restoration, the BMA mean a 35% increase phased in to compensate for inflation over more than a decade. The government said that wasn't reasonable and awarded an average 9% last year. The Health Secretary Victoria Atkins had this response to the doctors' union.
I am dismayed, but also on behalf of patients, I'm angry. We know that industrial action last year had the impact that 1.4 million appointments were cancelled as a result of strikes. And to call this strike now, during a general election campaign, I think shows very cynical politicisation.
Out in Sheffield today, there was a mixed view of the junior doctors' strike plan.
I really support what they're doing in many ways, but I think they'll have to be careful that it doesn't backfire on them.
Why would you upset the apple cart when you don't know who's going to have the reins of power to make the decisions in your favour a few weeks hence?
So I can imagine the impact of this on like a lot of people that have to wait, or a lot of people that require like new diagnoses. And
if now, when are people going to listen? You know, they're doing it for a reason, for unfair pay and stuff.
Labour said the chaos would continue under the Conservatives, but what would they do to resolve the dispute?
That 35% pay claim is not one that I would be able to meet on July the 5th. I'd be willing to sit down and negotiate because the journey back to fair pay is exactly that. It's going to be a journey, not an event. So let's work together on pay.
The Liberal Democrats were clear where the blame lies.
well, this is a complete mess, isn't it? And it's the patients who I really fear for. The fact is that the Conservatives have had months, if not years, to resolve all of these strikes. And the fact that strikes are happening yet again just shows that they're leaving our NHS in a state of crisis and chaos.
And this is what it'll mean for patients: empty operating theatres and yet more cancellations of appointments and procedures.
So whoever forms the next government will find this high in the in tray and will need to quickly try to find a way forward and get talks going again if possible. I should say the Scottish Government reached agreement with junior doctors some time ago. Meanwhile, there are ongoing disputes between junior doctors and devolved administrations in Wales and Northern Ireland.
Hugh, thank you. Well, Rishi Sunak has been campaigning in southwest England today. He said his party would replace what he called rip-off university degrees and fund 100,000 more apprenticeships instead. The southwest is a key battleground for the Conservatives. Our political editor Chris Mason has been following the Prime Minister on his campaign trail today. He joins us now from Dunkeswell in Devon. Chris.
Yes, hello. This time last week, the Prime Minister was getting drenched in Downing Street, and so was I. It feels like a million years ago last Wednesday evening, and the weather in Devon is definitely kinder. Now, on the programme this week, I have spent time with Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, with Nigel Farage from Reform UK, and in the coming days we'll hear from the Liberal Democrats and also the Scottish National Party. But today we've been on the campaign trail with the Prime Minister. Bodmin in Cornwall, 1 week into the general election campaign. And the verdict from some folk here?
It's okay, really. I think it's a good idea to have it.
They're looking for your vote, of course, but I just think they're fighting with each other and it's ridiculous.
What do you make of the whole election fun and games?
It's a total nightmare. I can't bear it. I cannot watch television. It's just dreadful.
You can't be telling me you're not watching television.
I'm trying not to.
Planes and policies, trains and yet more trains. The Prime Minister arriving in Penzance this morning, not looking too rough after a night on the sleeper from London. First stop, a rail maintenance depot to talk up his idea on apprenticeships in England.
A future Conservative government will take the bold action of closing down underperforming university degrees that are letting our young people down, and instead using that money to fund 100,000 new high-quality apprenticeships.
Oh, literally 2 weeks ago.
Meet, greet, talk and move on is the rhythm for all the party leaders out and about. It is lunchtime, this is Liskeard, and the Prime Minister is arriving at a local broadband company.
I've heard you're a bit of an expert anyway.
Having a go at other people's jobs, all part of many a visit.
Oh, boom! Right, thank you very much.
And listen out for the generous job offer, depending how things turn out.
Yes, that was a perfect splice if you're looking for a job in telecom.
Yeah. There we go.
The winding road to the 4th of July polling day still has plenty around the corner, and where every announcement prompts a flurry of reaction as each party seeks to undermine the others.
Our message that the Conservatives let people down in the West Country over the health service, over the economy, over things like sewage in the rivers and on our beaches is resonating with people.
The Conservatives have to say, if they're going to announce any policy, how they're going to pay for it. That's what we deliver in the Labour Party, fully funded, fully costed policies, and that's what we expect from the Conservatives.
Of course, in this general election campaign, it's really the cost of the union that's on the table. We've got a cost of living crisis inflicted by Westminster, we've got challenges in relation to Brexit and, of course, austerity policies.
The Prime Minister's made quite a thing of projecting a certain energy. He's hurtled around England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland the first couple of days. Now he's here in the southwest of England, a region teeming with Conservative seats he really needs to cling on to. And after a morning in Cornwall, next it's Devon. Late this afternoon, Rishi Sunak arrived in Dunkeswell at a military vehicle manufacturer to talk to members of staff and to reporters. Prime Minister, there's no doubt you're meeting plenty of people out and about, but are you changing many minds?
Well, look, Chris, you can see we're having a conversation here, but I'm determined to talk to as many people as I can across this country over the remaining weeks of this campaign. That's how I started it, and as you heard, I'm thoroughly enjoying myself. I'm enjoying having conversations with people about the things that matter. Yes, I am changing minds.
The tour for all the party leaders trundles on. Oh, and you can tell the election is getting nearer when you see pictures like this. 5 weeks to go. Chris Mason, BBC News, in Devon.
So the Conservatives are promising 100,000 more apprenticeships per year by the end of the next Parliament, funded by scrapping what they call rip-off university courses. How would it work? Our education editor Bramwyn Jeffries reports from Birmingham.
Universities in England already have to meet minimum standards, and the regulator can fine them if they don't. The Conservatives want to go further and close down courses that are deemed to be of low value. For the first time, that could include taking graduate earnings into account, and that might squeeze some creative subjects. It's also not clear exactly how much money it would save. There's no limit on the number of university places available in England, so it's up to students what they decide.
I know a lot of people that I know would rather do an apprenticeship than a uni degree.
I believe every single degree has value.
The Conservative Skills Promise involves creating 100,000 extra apprenticeships a year by the end of the next Parliament. The party says by then it would cost £885 million. Large employers already have to put cash into supporting apprenticeships, but each year around £550 million of that is handed back to the government unspent, raising questions about employers' willingness to get involved in creating new apprenticeships. So for these changes to happen, it requires both students and employers to make different decisions, and that's beyond the control of any government. Bramwyn Jeffries, BBC News, Birmingham.
Well, Labour's focus has been on the NHS today and their ideas to tackle the huge backlog of patients waiting for treatment. They say if elected within 5 years, they will clear the backlog for those waiting more than 18 weeks. Our health correspondent Dominic Hughes considers how it might work.
The current waiting list for the NHS in England stands at 7.5 million treatments, and more than 40% of people have been waiting longer than 18 weeks. Well, Labour says that should it win power, it will, within the first year of taking office, offer 40,000 extra appointments every week on top of the 2 million or so that are already happening. And it's going to do this by encouraging the NHS to do more work in the evenings and at the weekends, and by making greater use of the private sector. Labour has also said it would double the number of scanning equipments that are available, because people waiting for vital test results are a key logjam in the system. So Labour says its plans will cost £1.3 billion in the first year. So where's this money going to come from? Well, the party says it's going to clamp down on tax dodgers and close loopholes for non-dom taxpayers. But this has been tried before, and experience tells us it's very unclear exactly how much money this can raise and when it will come on stream. There are also key questions around staffing. Not only are there significant shortages in nurses, doctors and other key health workers, but we know that people working in the NHS are burnt out and stressed after an incredibly tough few years. So it's great having all these extra scanners and appointments, but you've got to have the people to make it work.
Now, there is still confusion tonight over whether the long-serving Labour MP Diane Abbott can or can't stand again in the general election. She has been readmitted as a Labour MP after being suspended last year. Today, she said she has been barred from standing, but Sir Keir Starmer later said that that wasn't true and no decision had yet been taken. Well, tonight there's a rally in support of her in her local constituency in East London. Our correspondent Joe Pike is in Hackney.
Will you be standing as an independent?
What have Labour said to you?
At the last election, she was Labour's pick to be Home Secretary. This time round, Diane Abbott may not be allowed to run for the party at all.
What's your message to Keir Starmer?
This morning, she told the BBC, "I am banned from standing as a Labour candidate." It took almost 5 hours until that was officially challenged.
No, that's not true. No decision has been taken to bar Diane Abbott.
The process that we were going through ended with the restoration of the whip the other day. So she's a member of the Parliamentary Labour Party, and no decision has been taken barring her.
This row has been rumbling for more than a year after the veteran MP said Jewish, Irish and traveller people do not face racism all their lives. She apologised but was suspended and only readmitted as a Labour MP last night after a 13-month party process.
It is quite appalling, it's vindictive, it's cruel, and Keir Starmer's actions in forcing Diane Abbott out seem to be a slap in the face.
Over decades, Diane Abbott built a reputation as a passionate and outspoken politician, but almost always from the backbenches. It was only with the assent of her friend and ally Jeremy Corbyn that she got close to power, reaching the shadow cabinet in 2015, nearly 30 years after her historic arrival in Parliament.
As Britain's first black woman MP.
But since Keir Starmer took over, she's been consistently critical of him on social media. Seats as safe as this are rarely of interest in a general election. The Diane Abbott row has changed that. Some within the party argue today's confusion has been damaging and distracting from their key campaign aims. Others say it supports one of Keir Starmer's key arguments, that over the last 5 years, Labour has changed. Among her constituents, views about her treatment are mixed.
I just don't know what they did, what she did that upset so many people, that they could be so cruel, so ruthless.
I think she has the opportunity to retire with dignity on what is a very significant record. I personally would like the opportunity to vote for a different Labour candidate.
For now, it seems Diane Abbott's time representing this community could soon come to an end. This is Hackney Town Hall, where in the next 15 minutes or so, a community event is due to begin under the banner Let Diane Stand. It's not clear whether Diane Abbott herself will turn up and speak. Ultimately, though, the decision on all of this lies with Labour's ruling National Executive Committee, who are due to meet next week. Keir Starmer and his allies do have a majority on that committee, meaning ultimately, Sophie, her political future does lie in his hands.
Joe Pike, thank you very much. The former Scottish Health Secretary Michael Matheson has been banned from Parliament for a record 27 days for breaching its expenses policy. It's after an £11,000 data bill was racked up on his parliamentary iPad. He eventually admitted his children had used it to watch football while on holiday. His salary will also be withdrawn for 54 days. The mother of 34-year-old Amy Gray, who was murdered on a beach in Bournemouth last Friday, has paid tribute to her daughter. She said Amy, seen here on the left with her wife, was amazing, funny, kind and energetic. A second woman, who was also attacked, suffered serious injuries and remains in hospital. A 20-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder. The Singapore Airlines flight that hit severe turbulence last week dropped 180 feet in less than 5 seconds. That's what an initial report has found. The plane was travelling from London to Singapore. 1 British passenger died and dozens more were left seriously injured. 26 people are still in hospital, many with spine and head and brain injuries. Our transport correspondent Katie Austin is here, so we have learnt more about what actually happened on that flight that day.
That's right. Accident investigators have now been able to analyse information from the aircraft's flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder. And based on that, Singapore's Transport Ministry has released an account of what happened. Now, these initial findings conclude that the flight operated as normal until it was over the south of Myanmar, where there was probably rapidly rising and falling air. There was some moderate turbulence, but then rapid changes in vertical acceleration. So after going up, the plane went quickly down and then up again. Those changes over less than 5 seconds resulted in people who didn't have their seatbelts fastened becoming, in the ministry's words, airborne and then falling back down again. Now, during this time, the aircraft lost, as you say, 178 feet in altitude, and this whole sequence of events likely caused all those injuries. Now, Earlier today, Singapore Airlines did say that 42 passengers were still in Bangkok, where the flight diverted to after that incident, and 26 of those people were still in hospital, it said. The airline also said it was committed to supporting crew members and passengers, including covering their medical expenses.
Katie Austin, thank you. The time is almost 6:20. Our top story this evening. Junior doctors announced 5 days of strikes in England just a week before the general election. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. And it's never too early to go techno. The push to update some well-loved nursery rhymes.
At 6:30, a wet weekend causes another muddy mess, reigniting the debate over festivals in London parks. Plus, hoping to be in the running for Paris 2024, Olympic hopeful Enfield's Desiree Henry.
Now, in the run-up to the election, we're getting the latest from our political reporters right across the UK, finding out about what is at stake in their constituencies and the key issues concerning people locally. Tonight, we're going to the West Midlands and to North Norfolk. Simon Gilbert is in Birmingham, but let's start with Paul Mosley, who is in the seaside town of Cromer. Paul.
Thank you, Sophie, and welcome to Cromer, a beautiful town in North Norfolk, the constituency with the oldest voters in the country. A third of people here are 65 or over. Now, that puts real pressure on health and social care services, but it's also not easy if you're younger, because this is such a popular place to visit. Lots of people from outside the area buy holiday homes here. It means that 10% of the properties are either second homes or empty. Now, the fight in this constituency comes down to two parties. The Conservatives won the seat back in 2019, but they are facing a serious challenge from the Liberal Democrats, who'd held the seat for the 18 years before that. Now, Cromer is perhaps best known for its crabs. Both of those parties are very much looking to get their claws on the seat in North Norfolk.
Paul, thank you. And this is the list of candidates standing for North Norfolk as of today. The final list will be on the BBC website when they are all confirmed. And now let's go to Birmingham. Simon Gilbert is there for us tonight. Simon.
Yeah, Birmingham, of course, is the second city. It's in the heart of the country, but it hasn't been at the centre of the election campaign so far. It's almost a week since we heard the date of the general election, and yet we've had no high-profile visits from leaders. We've had no cabinet members even attend over since the election date was announced. But you'll remember it's only a few weeks ago that all eyes were actually on this part of the country as the West Midlands mayoral election result was announced. You may remember Conservative Andy Street lost in that election to Labour's Richard Parker. And actually, Andy Street has since confirmed that he won't be standing as a Conservative candidate in the forthcoming general election. But there were some interesting lessons from that West Midlands mayoral contest, not least that the George Galloway-backed independent candidate, Ahmed Yaqub, he came third, campaigning on issues around Gaza. Now, we're stood here in Ladywood and he's going to stand here again. It's the Birmingham constituency, which covers Birmingham city centre. And we're actually seeing now that there are other candidates springing up, also standing on that pro-Gaza platform. And of course, Labour's stance around Gaza has been brought into sharp focus as a result of the local elections. It seems that that stance is harming their vote, particularly among Muslim communities. This is a highly Muslim populated area and it's sure to be a key election issue going forward.
Simon, thank you. And here is the list of candidates we know about so far who are standing in Birmingham Ladywood constituency. And last night we reported from Boston and Skegness in Lincolnshire, and I just must show you this as well because we had an incomplete list of the candidates standing. So here are all the candidates we know about so far. The BBC News website will, of course, have the complete list when they are all confirmed. There is, of course, a lot to keep up with across this election campaign. To make it easier for you, we have just launched this, Election 2024, the headlines on iPlayer. Every evening, you'll be able to watch a short but perfectly formed summary of the day's key events. The jury has been sent out to consider their verdict in Donald Trump's criminal hush money trial in New York. The former US president is charged with falsifying business documents to cover up a payment to the porn star Stormy Daniels shortly before the 2016 presidential election. The judge has directed jurors to set aside any personal opinions. Mr. Trump denies the charges. The owner of Royal Mail has agreed to a £3.6 billion takeover bid from a Czech billionaire. The offer includes commitments to protect the company's public service offering. The deal will still need a final agreement from the government. Simon Jack is with us now. Just put into context how big a moment this is.
Well, the first owner of Royal Mail was Henry VIII. 500 years ago. The new owner is a guy called Daniel Kretinsky, as you say, a Czech billionaire. He owns big stakes in Sainsbury's, in West Ham Football Club, and he also already owns 27% of Royal Mail. And today, the owners of Royal Mail recommended that other shareholders sell him the rest. Now, clearly, this is really sensitive. So it comes with some commitments, maintaining the one price goes anywhere universal service, retaining the name, the brand, the UK headquarters here, and also a promise that there'll be no compulsory redundancies until 2025, only next year, which matches the agreement they've currently got with the unions, but they say that could be extended. Now, the government can block this deal. So far, Jeremy Hunt has said it will be scrutinised, but there's no objection in principle. The Shadow Business Secretary said these assurances that we've just talked about are welcome. We'll make sure they're stuck to. The unions, though, are uneasy about it. They say mismanagement at the company made it vulnerable to this kind of takeover. What might we notice? Well, hopefully, say Kretinsky's people, we might think things are getting a bit better because delivery targets have been consistently missed. There have been a lot of fines. They've been losing money, and expect a bigger focus on parcels outside of the home. But that, if a deal goes through, the price of the shares right now is £3.30. The deal is offering £3.70. So quite a lot of people think it might not happen. We won't get a decision. Well, a decision will be for the next government after the election.
Simon Jack, our business editor, thank you. Almost 200 years after it was launched, the London newspaper, The Evening Standard, is axing its daily print edition. It will be published just once a week instead. Circulation figures have fallen in the past 5 years from 800,000 to 250,000. The paper has been handed out for free since 2009. The fall in readership is being blamed on more people working from home and the fact that Wi-Fi is now available on the underground. Nursery rhymes like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star have been around for hundreds of years, sung to generations of children. Is it time to update them? New research has shown that many parents think it is time to widen the musical diet for the nation's toddlers. David Silito reports on those wanting to bring a new sound to our classrooms and playgroups.
The wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round.
The Wheels on the Bus, a toddler classic, but now a new version. Welcome to Techno for Toddlers. Lady Pierce, just one of a number of artists trying to widen the preschool musical diet.
So my daughter is 1.5 years old, and because I'm a music producer, I was like, oh, maybe I should try and remix this into something more modern on my TikTok. And then I did that, and then it just resonated with a lot of parents. It's got about almost 2 million streams in just 3 weeks, which is really, really crazy.
Hey, Anna, hey, Anna. And it's not just parents. New research has revealed the musical tastes of under fives are rather wider than the wheels on the bus.
So your favourite music is?
Michael Jackson and Janet Jackson.
What type of music do you like?
Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash, yeah, you do listen to that, don't you?
Jordan's got a cheeky smile.
The survey reveals around half of parents would like nursery rhyme lyrics updated and more variety in preschool music.
The under fives are often just underestimated and kind of written off. And actually what we've seen here is that they're like the rest of us. They like listening to a diversity of music, and the music that's being produced for them should reflect that.
And the parents here were definitely in agreement.
You've pretty much had it with traditional nursery rhymes,
yes,
haven't you?
I definitely have.
Children's rhymes, nursery rhymes, no. Not for me, no. So yeah.
You've had it with Blah Blah Black Sheep, haven't you?
Yes.
So maybe Lenny's onto something with his toddler techno. But as any parent knows, we'll wait and see what Britain's 3-year-olds actually demand. David Solito, BBC News.
Now, a volcano in southwestern Iceland has erupted again, sending glowing hot lava, shooting 160 feet into the air. It's the 5th eruption since December on the peninsula near the country's capital, Reykjavik. The fissure that's opened up is about 1.5 miles long and it is growing. Time for a look at the weather. Louise Lear is here, not quite so dramatic here.
No, but I have a pretty dramatic picture behind me as well. Take a look at this. Thunderclouds brewing across parts of eastern Scotland. This was actually 5 just a few hours ago, and we've had a real rash of showers here over the last few hours, some of them heavy and even thundery as well. I'll go back and just show you those in just a moment. So some of the thunderstorms will continue and they will move their way steadily south and east as we go through the evening and overnight. You can see how widespread they are across parts of Aberdeenshire and down into Edinburgh, where we had the thunderstorms, and they are drifting their way south and east as well. So that frontal system will start to ease away, and then behind it we gradually start to see this area of high pressure building, but it will take its time, but something a little quieter, a little more promising into the weekend. Through the night though, we'll see some heavier bursts down through northern England and across Wales, and they will steadily sink their way south. We could see some torrential thundery downpours, localised flooding not out of the question. So as we go into tomorrow, look at the showers. Fewer showers into the north, but all drifting their way steadily south due to the direction of the wind. And some of these showers across East Anglia and South East England could turn heavy and thundery as we go through the afternoon. Somewhat brighter conditions out to the west, a blustery afternoon with a northwesterly wind, and top temperatures generally in the brighter moments maybe around 19 degrees, but only 14 or 15 if you're in the cloud and the showers. Now, as we head towards the weekend, here's our area of high pressure finally quietening the weather story down, but we will be chasing cloud amounts around into the weekend. But I can certainly promise you something a lot more in the way of drier weather to come, settled, sunnier and eventually a little bit warmer. Sophie.
We will thank you for that, Louise. Thank you very much. That's it from the BBC News at 6. Time now for the news where you are. Goodbye.
Thank you. Good evening to you. Coming up on BBC London. Elected in 1987 as the first black MP, now confusion over whether Hackney's Diane Abbott will be allowed to stand for Labour in the election. What do her constituents make of it?
Diane Abbott is very, very well loved.
I think if she's a party member, she should be allowed to stand. I would be happy to have a different candidate for Labour.
And in Hackney tonight, there's a rally in support of Diane Abbott.
Also ahead tonight, a sharp rise in the number of reported cases of sexual harassment of young girls and teenagers on London's transport network. Plus, from daily to weekly, London's Evening Standard plans to axe its daily print edition. Calls to save the former school and wartime hospital that's topped a list of endangered buildings. And
even much more delicious.
we meet the father and son behind the homemade Peckham patties, now filling supermarket shelves. Very warm welcome to the programme. Nice to have you with us. We start with more on the confusion over the long-standing London Labour MP Diane Abbott and the upcoming general election. The country's first black woman MP and her party leader Sir Keir Starmer are giving different accounts of whether she can or cannot stand for Labour on the 4th of July. Well, tonight a rally is being held in the constituency she's represented for 37 years. And our political editor, Tim Donovan, is there tonight. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Ruth. Yeah, people are just beginning to gather. Not a huge crowd, but a rally due here in support of Diane Abbott after a day, yes, you could say that, of some confusion, probably worth reminding those people who haven't kept across the detail of this, how we got here. And it all began in April last year when Diane Abbott wrote to The Observer a letter in which she was talking about Irish, Jewish and traveller people suffering prejudice, but she said that they didn't experience racism all their lives. Like black people, she was suspended by Labour at that point. But now we learn from Newsnight, we heard this last night, that in December 2023 the investigation was completed and she was given a formal warning. So what, 5 months ago she then did an online